Labs, and welcome to today's Media Logs on Propaganda. We are just thrilled at how this diverse global online community is developing, and we're so glad to welcome you to this program. We have just one tight 60-minute period, and in this period you're going to get a chance to learn about some new curriculum materials from Tactical Tech. You're going to get a chance to engage in learning experience yourself, and then get a small group discussion with some really amazing people who are part of this online community. And we keep growing. So we are really, really happy, and we want you to help us spread the word about these programs. We're going to have these programs every 2 weeks, all the way through until May, I think, right? All the way for a long time. And we're really glad that you've decided to join us. Now, before we get started, we realize that we are starting to develop relationships. This is our this is our fourth program, and we thought it would be good for us to try to find ways to get to know each other better. And that's partly because we're imagining a little bit deeper collaboration to happen in the months that follow. Christina, can you talk a little bit about your plan for how we are going to try to get to know each other better?
Yeah, sure. Because we have been crafting a little something, actually. I hope you can all see this Padlet. Just give me a thumbs up if you can see it. That's good. So what we have been thinking, because Renee just said that this is already our fourth webinar, but with next year we want to change into a more community-oriented phase, right? Where we want to put colleagues in transnational intercultural collaborations. And of course, that's really important that you have shared interests, like ideas and goals with regard to propaganda, media literacy, education, that you want to work on together. And that's why we have come up with a little Padlet for you. And what we have done is, we have come up with an idea how you could introduce yourself, your background and your ideas, and we have come up with a little template here. And so, as you can see, you can describe your background, share your experience and ideas for the future, and that way we hope that you can engage with each other and find a potential partner.
Perfect.
Interrupt me, Renee.
That was really good. Christina, will you put the link to that in the Padlet?
In the chat.
Into the chat. We'll be talking about this for a while. We won't really be using it until a little bit later on in the program, but we thought it would be good for you to get a hold of it and mark it as a place for you to share your identity with us, because we're going to just keep having more and more fun as these programs go on. Every 2 weeks, 2 hours a month. It's a small commitment, but you'll find that it rewards itself so enormously. And you're going to see that today as we meet Daisy Kidd. Daisy, we're so happy that you are here. When I learned about Tactical Tech, it was because I had the experience of going to see the Glass Room project in New York City. And I was just so blown away by the brilliant design and sort of educational sensibility of the glass, and following your organization for a long time now. Most everybody who's here knows that Daisy is leading the project called What the Future Wants. And I just love that name. And we've invited you to come here to talk to us about Tactical Tech's approach to media literacy. And certainly we want to learn more and get a chance to experience the data detox for youth project. So Daisy, take it away.
Thank you, Renee. And just to check everyone can hear me, okay? Yeah, okay, good, great. For me, it's always really exciting to be speaking to people who are using the resources. We're often in the process of designing these things, creating them, testing them, and then they're out in the wide world, and we very rarely get a chance to test them and have discussions around them. So I'm really, really looking forward to this session today. And I'm also looking forward to hearing about what you're doing and how you might want to use this resource. And I'm going to give a quick introduction to Tactical Tech and the Data Detox project. I'll also talk a bit about the Glassroom project that Renee just spoke about. And then I will do some sort of activity around this workbook, and we'll have a discussion afterwards as well. So because I have this 10 minutes to try and pack in a lot of information about the resource, I'll start already. So Tactical Tech is an international NGO, a nonprofit, and we're based in Berlin, and we tend to work internationally. And we were founded in 2003, and we generally work at the intersection between technology, politics, society, and often trying to bring in culture and arts and design and multimedia into trying to make educational materials and projects for different audiences. And we look at many different topics around society and technology. So we look at misinformation. We also look at how politics is used how data is used in politics. We also have a citizen investigation project. And these are just some of the topics that we work on. And within Tactical Tech, I lead the project What the Future Wants, which is a relatively new project, which is focusing specifically on young people, where we're trying to ask young people how they feel about their digital future, what they would like to change about it, what they feel in control of, what they feel out of control with. What I'll be talking about today is one of the first resources that we published as part of the youth project, which we published last year. And I'll also try and give you a short update on the work that we've been doing this year and the work that we have planned for the next couple of years. So to start with the Data Detox project, this is actually one of Tactical Tech's longest standing projects, and it's part of our public engagement program. So our program that tries to engage the public in these issues around technology and to try and give them some sort of agency and control. And the Data Detox project was started in 2016 as part of the Glassroom project, which I'll talk about in a moment. And the concept of the Data Detox is to try and give people some agency and control over their data and over their digital lives in a way that suits them. So we provide lots of materials, articles, walkthroughs, toolkits, and workshops that all try and address this question of what is the issues that you find, or the conflicts or the problems that you have in terms of your relationship with technology, or in terms of your concept of data or your concept of this issue, and how can you take steps in order to try and start addressing these things. So it was really started from the basis of trying to create a space and a kind of practical how-to on how to kind of address these issues of data and technology. And it started very much around this concept of data and looking at this within a privacy context. So this idea that your data kind of runs away from you, that you leave this data footprint, and how can you start to take control? And then over the years, it also became more of a holistic approach, as we realized also that it's not just this singular issue. Data and privacy forms the basis of a lot of these issues, but then it starts to incorporate other things. And so now the Data Detox Kit incorporates also this topic of misinformation, also digital well-being and digital security as well. So we're trying to branch out and link these things together, because you can't talk about one of these issues without talking about the other, and they all start to merge in the end. So I also wanted to talk about the Glassroom project. Oh, sorry. Because the image that you see here on the right is the Data Detox Kit being given out at the Glassroom project. And the Glassroom is a public intervention that we set up to try and basically engage the public in these issues through art and design and creative means. So we work with different artists, we work with different designers to try and create an experience and stories around data. So looking at things around big tech, looking at how technology impacts the environment, looking at how misinformation spreads, and we're focusing on all these topics. And the images you see here are from these big versions of the exhibition that we've had so far in Berlin, New York, London, and San Francisco. And we also have a smaller community version of this exhibition, which can be set up by schools, libraries, museums, and basically all you need is a space, a table, some people to engage the public in these discussions. And it's generally a low cost version of the exhibition. So it doesn't cost as much to print, it doesn't require all these rooms, it doesn't require massive space, and it's designed to be set up in spaces where people are already passing by, or perhaps it's an educational space like a library or a school, or a cultural space like a museum. And the images you see here, the one on the right, is from the most recent edition of this community glass room, which is all around misinformation. So we designed posters and apps and animations that try and bring up these issues of misinformation and try and put them into public spaces so that people can talk about them. And so far, this community version of the glass room has been visited by close to 220,000 people, and it's been hosted in 232 libraries, schools, organizations, and events in 42 countries. And I think these figures are also possibly from a month or two ago, so it may even be higher now. But the concept is really to create something that's transferable, that people can set up themselves, that provoke and prompt people in a creative way to start discussing these topics, and also so that they can learn something about their own relationship to these issues on their terms. And today, this whole session will actually be about the Data Detox youth. And what we found through this public education program, so through the Data Detox and the Glassroom projects, which have been running for a few years now, is that they're often used in educational contexts, and often teachers are taking them, or librarians, and they're being used somehow as a prompt to engage young people in these topics, because they're quite creative and playful, because sometimes they're a bit cheeky or provocative, they tend to work really well with young people. And so in that sense, we found that it was being used a lot. So once we had started the youth project, which was about 3 years ago, we first started by looking at the Data Detox kit and examining how we could start to adapt it and translate it more for young people. And this is where the Data Detox youth came from, which is essentially a toolkit that people can print out. And it's got different worksheets with different activities that people can use within different environments, like classroom. It was used quite a lot with homeschooling, so parents were using it. And it's printed out, so you do it away from a screen, and then you can use a device alongside it, so to change settings or to start a discussion. And it's also available in these languages at the top. What we found is that many people have translated it, and they've also adapted it. So this is a partner who we have in Uruguay, who co-developed this cartoon social media campaign version of the kit with young people. And so they took each segment and basically made it into a character or a campaign. So I'm going to quickly, I know we don't have so much time, I'm going to quickly go through each of the sections of the kit. So like the main Data Detox project, it follows the topics of digital privacy, digital security, digital well-being, and misinformation. So this first topic, digital privacy, is all around this idea of getting a grip on your data. So if your data is running away from you and you no longer have control of it, how can you start to get more control? And the first activity here is about having some sort of an app cleanse. So seeing how many apps you have on your phone, thinking, how many of these do I actually need? Also, the second activity is looking more at this, which apps have access to your location and why do they have access to your location? So one of the materials or the articles that we have of Data Detox Youth is, does your weather app need access to your contacts? So it's the default permissions that these apps often have aren't necessary. So this is the first page. And then on the second page, it looks more at Google. So looking at this idea of like a big mega company and how this amass and collection of data could be potentially harmful. So it gets you to look here at the start at how many of these Google products you use, and then to see and investigate how Google profiles you. And then in the end, it's about somehow limiting the sharing settings that you use with social media. So often also by default, these are often set to be very, very open. So it tries to reduce these somewhat. The second section is all about security, and we decided, because this topic is also so huge, to focus mostly on passwords and passphrases. So this whole section is about how easy it is to guess passwords, and this first one is about the most commonly used passwords, and you have to guess what they are. And then in the second section, you build your own passphrase by basically pinning together 5 words and then making some capital letters and doing things like this. In digital wellbeing, we have framed it around people having relationships with their phones. So we decided to kind of play on this idea of like breaking up with your phone, or, you know, somehow going away from it. And this section is really interesting. It was, I think, probably the most complicated to write, because it's so dependent on personal opinion, and people have very, very, very diverse opinions about this topic. More so, I think, than privacy, more so, I think, than digital security, which kind of feel needed somehow. But I think with digital wellbeing, it's a lot more based on your own personal experience. So we try to design all the activities around this balance. So not necessarily technology is bad, break it with your phone, throw it away, but more, this is something we all have to deal with. What are the benefits? What are the benefits? What are the negatives of it? And how can we somehow balance and find some sort of link between them, or point of calm, point of zen in the middle? So this first activity is looking at the things that you do on your phone, and then you think about the things you like about that and the things you dislike. And the aim here is to try and find some connection between those two things, find these paradoxes that exist within technology. So, you know, technology can make us feel more connected to people, but it can also make us feel more lonely. Or technology can be really fun, but it can also be scary or harmful or risky, and these kind of bad things. And this second section here is looking at the different persuasive design elements that you find frequently on these apps. So really, we're just trying to raise these to the surface. Young people are already super aware of these things. They know that autoplay exists. They know that there's infinite scrolls. They know there's a like button. It's more trying to bring these up and say, somebody designed these for a reason. What is that reason, and how can we start thinking about that and addressing it? And the second point on here is more just around tips and tricks of things you can do if you feel like you're kind of somehow dependent on technology, some things that you can do to kind of push it away slightly, or take a break from it. And despite this section being framed around breakup, the whole premise kind of ends with we all have to use technology. None of us can break up with it. So we have to somehow find a way of making it work. And finally, this last section, which is on misinformation. And this again is obviously a huge topic. And I think with the general framing and flow of this section, we're trying to basically make people aware, not necessarily how misinformation works, but more that you're seeing specific information because of some sort of algorithmically generated content. Why are you seeing that information, and how can you start to be more curious? So we're trying to design it around this idea of curiosity as opposed to polarization, and trying to get people to think about all the things they're not seeing. So this first section here is looking at bursting your filter bubble. So trying to examine, okay, if you're seeing this with on the home screen of your social media, what is your friend seeing, or what is somebody else seeing, and how is that different, and why might you be seeing those things? What about your internet use, your likes, your comments is providing that is providing this information to you? We have a clickbait activity here where you try and create a clickbait headline, and in the end it's looking more about why we share, what is our human connection to information. So it's trying to frame it also around things that we care about. So when do you consume or share or see information that relates to something you care about, and how does that change your relationship to it somehow? So this was a real whiz through the Data Detox Youth. I hope I'm not too much over time. And I think I wanted to, what's really, I'm just going to go back to this screen so you don't read the questions before I ask them. What's really interesting for me is to see how this toolkit and this workbook is used in different educational contexts, and what are the kind of gaps with it. And one thing that we found when testing it was that people would take it and use it, but they wouldn't necessarily feel prepared to open these big discussions around the topics. So, okay, here's a fun, playful activity, change your settings, do this thing, but then answering the so what question or getting this point across to young people was the limitation of it. So that's what I wanted to focus on today, because I think hopefully we can all learn from each other on that. And I'd be really intrigued to hear what you have to say as well. So the activity that we're going to do now, and I think we'll have about 15 minutes, if I'm right. You can choose an activity from the Data Detox Youth and try it out yourselves. I'll share a link also to the, I see a link's already been shared there. And you can choose one from any of the sections. I've also got some suggestions here on the next slide, which you can pick from. And then discuss in your groups, what is the real issue here? What is this activity trying to address? And then think of a discussion question that will try and engage the young people you know with this issue. So answering the so what question. So think about what the real issue is, and then think about how you would try and engage young people with that issue. So I've put here discussion question, but maybe you have an activity in mind or some sort of contextual framing for the activity. So the scenario is also that you would be using this with young people. I have just I pulled out 3 activities which I think could work quite well if you don't have time to look through them. So there's this one from the privacy section, which is who does Google think you are? And you go through and you basically see how many Google products you use. Then go to my activity Google. I did this today as a practice, and amazingly found out that Google is feeding me YouTube adverts based on alcohol and gambling. So sometimes it really reveals some quite interesting things, which I was really shocked by. So the second one is this digital wellbeing one, where you think about your likes and dislikes to do with technology. And then the third one is burst your filter bubble. And have a look through the kit. Maybe there's also something else that caught your eye or something you'd like to try out. You don't have so long as well, so maybe you won't be able to go through the whole activity, but just kind of get a feel for it as well.
Okay, that gives us a good overview of what's going to happen in these small groups. We're going to break up into groups of small groups, introduce yourself to the folks who are in the room, and then explore these 3 questions and 3 possible lesson plans to explore. Give me a thumbs up if you are looking at the chat right now and you feel pretty confident about what you're going to do in your small group activity as you explore and discuss these questions. Thumbs up if you get the point of what this small group is going to be all about. Rooms are open. We're going to take about 15 minutes, maybe 16 minutes. Have fun, make a new friend. Rooms are open. Hey, we're back. Hey, give me a thumbs up on if that was fantastic, if it was good, if it was rotten. Give me a little sense of what was that like for you? Okay, now we only have 10 minutes, but this is always the best part of the media logs because people identify some big idea, theme, or interesting paradox or something curious that came up in the small group that they feel urged to share with the whole group. Put your hand up, raise your hand, or grab the talking stick. What ideas came up in your group that you want to share? David! In our group, it was cool.
One of the things that we were looking at the privacy, the privacy data and what getting a grip on your data activity. And one of the things is that we struggle a little bit with normalization of sharing of data. And we're at least here in the United States, we use so many Google products because of economics and affordability, and that we're part of the system of normalization of giving your trusting Google and giving all your information away. So that I don't know what we do about that, but it's an issue.
Thanks for sharing. What other issues came up in your group that you want to call attention to? Robert.
Yeah. One question that came up I think is intriguing was that in one of our discussion questions, we might say, you know, why might you care about, we did what does Google know about you? And one of the questions said it could be a discussion question, be, well, you know, why might you care about this? And it could be that some people will say, I really don't care. And is that okay? Or what further discussion should that prompt? You know, how to handle when people say, that's fine. So how do we feel about that? You know?
Right. Great point. Yeah. Because we don't want to impose our values on students, right? But at the same time, that makes you feel uncomfortable when they say it doesn't matter. Thanks for sharing. Who's next? What are some big ideas that came up in your small group? Igor.
Well, we were discussing about love and hate with technology, and it was so fun because we use different perspectives. So if you're coming as a youth and in comparison to the experience of adults, it's totally different world. Our motivations are totally different. And it was so good to hear and see about the experience we had even in the times of pandemic, when for any specific reason we lost technology, it was not working, and we were forced to come back to the whiteboard. Just like Pamela said, it was so good to hear that experience, that we are not focused as much as on technology, although everything around us is keeping us focused on the technology. And the primary question is, what are our goals? Maybe this is the most important question for any media literacy activity in this relation to love and hate in comparison to technology. So what are your goals? And this is the question we can ask youngsters, adults, elderly people. Everybody should be challenged with that question. And finally, we were ending up in the breakout room and finding how hard it is to break up.
A lot of meaningful dialogue happens in those small group sessions. I'm with you on that. Thank you so much for sharing. Who's next?
Oh, well, I know that my group already shared, but I was about to type something else in a bit of a critical bent near the end, realizing we're up against a system that's designed to take our attention and to manipulate our attention. It's a lot bigger than us. And so sometimes it can feel overwhelming, which I think was addressed in some of these lessons. What do you do when your data is out of control? Because we feel like that a lot of times. So that was something that one of Michelle said that I really appreciated as kind of a 10,000 foot view. And I think that applies to a lot of these activities. Thank you.
Wow. Beautiful, beautiful point. One thing that came up in our small group was this idea of how comfortable are we with like modeling these activities with our own profiles, right? Because do I really want my students seeing which YouTube videos I looked at? Do I really want my students to see, okay, here's my data trail? And I realized that sometimes I might even ask my students to share that without being really aware of that being a violation of privacy, right? So that was that's been very helpful for me to think about that in teaching about privacy, we have to try to do our best to respect students' privacy, right? And all the power dynamics in the classroom make it, sometimes I'm not as sensitive to that as I should be.
Renee, actually, we talked about this also a lot in our group, but then we looked at the sequence, at the task sequence, and we thought, well, it actually offers a lot of opportunities, like to provide to have students, to let them have those eye-opening, powerful moments, but not necessarily having to share it with everybody, but to reflect alone and then get back to the group. So it can be like it has both, like reflection and safe space, but also like those eye-opening moments.
This is not something specific that came up in our group, but I think it's worth reflecting on. What is the impact of surveillance capitalism on us, let alone our students or colleagues? I mean, for myself, especially during the presidency of Donald Trump, there was a part of me, as I signed countless petitions to resist various things that Donald Trump was doing, that was thinking like, if this guy, if it continues along the trajectory it seemed to be going on, this may come back to bite me in some way later. And that's a kind of a real surveillance kind of consciousness that could make people more cautious about expressing themselves. And I think, it's something that even younger people might be aware of.
So powerful. Thank you so much for sharing. It speaks to the issue of the way in which fear, the corrosive ways in which fear reduces our ability to trust. So powerful. Daisy, I want to give you the last word before I announce our next session and get people ready for our next session.
Thank you, Renee. I've just been scribbling down loads of notes. Everything you were saying just then has sparked so many ideas. So I'm going to really quickly just run through some of the things I've been writing. I think this question around why do you care, and having the answer I actually don't care, is something we have found all the time through this project, through Glassroom, through Data Detox Kit. We're constantly having conversations with people who say, I actually don't care. And I think always the point here is, okay, in this scenario, you may not care, but somebody might care for some specific reason. So trying to think more on a societal level rather than on an individual level. How is it impacting other people? How is it potentially creating risk or harm with other people? And maybe finding like a different entry point for someone to care about it, rather than necessarily in relationship to their own lives, because it can feel totally daunting, something that people can't process, and therefore this feeling of kind of apathy and not caring is somehow simpler. I can totally relate to that. I also love that everyone's bringing it back to this idea of asking young people, what are your goals? Why do you care? It's I think this is a really, really great entry point, and trying to also understand in relation to this point of like, what is the impact on us? And how is that different among young people? What about their generation? When is it a youth problem? When is it a problem? And I think with trying to understand and engage young people in that conversation so that they can start to explore what is actually the issue for them is a really kind of important and integral point to all of these discussions. And I think I just wanted to also end on a note, because I didn't quite have a chance to speak about it, but this Glassroom project we shared, we're also going to be we're co-developing a version of this with young people at the moment, which is going to be launched next year. And this will be kind of like a prototype. It's the first time we've done co-development, but we're basically designing lots of activities, posters, and exhibition format that different schools, libraries, teachers can host. So definitely try and stay in the loop in that. And I saw in the chat some things around asking how to get hold of the Misinformation edition. And I believe that they're still distributing it, or they're designing a new one at the moment. So I'm gonna put in the chat here the email address. Trying to type while talking is really hard. The email address of the youth project. And so, yeah, you can get in touch here, and to contact the Glassroom, it's this email address here. And yeah, thank you all so much for all your great ideas. It's been fabulous.
All right, we're going to give Daisy Kidd a big round of applause. Daisy, thank you for joining us to the Media Logs community. We're delighted that we'll be back in just 2 weeks. We are changing the day for December 1st. Our next event will be on Wednesday, December 1st at 1800 CET, 12 p.m. EST. We're featuring Maria Ranieri from the University of Florence. She's got this great, cool project called Meet Tolerance, Media Education for Equity and Tolerance. So hopefully you'll join us for that. I'm Renee Hobbs. This is the Media Logs team. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you in 2 weeks. Bye now.
Bye.
Bye.